All right, so first off, I will introduce myself. My name is Kate Ortwine. I have brown wavy hair and blue eyes. I'm wearing an orange sweater today with wireframe glasses, and I'm in my early 30s. My pronouns are she, her, and I currently live and work on the beautiful traditional territory of the Coast Salish people, specifically the Comox First Nations. I've been the project coordinator for KidsAction coaching for 2 years with research co-leads Drs. Stephanie Glegg and Lise Olson. My background is in outdoor education and nonprofit management, and I studied professional writing and communications before that. I've worked with children with disabilities for a long time, and now that I'm in the research realm, I'm excited to dive deeper into supporting children with disabilities and helping share about awesome projects like this one that help get kids active and feel included. I will now pass off to my co-presenter, Anton.
Hi, folks. I'm Anton. I have short black hair and brown eyes. I'm in my mid-20s, used to be early 20s, but things are changing. And I'm also wearing wireframe glasses today with a beige sweater, and I use he, him pronouns. I've supported the KidsAction coaching project as a research assistant for over a year, and I'm now joining you as a master's student in rehabilitation science over here at the University of British Columbia, where I'm helping expand the project under the supervision of Dr. Stephanie Glegg. As we introduce this project, I'd like to acknowledge here that KidsAction Coaching's work is carried out on the traditional homelands of the Coast Salish peoples. This includes the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh nations. We would also like to acknowledge that the Seal Okanagan First Nation, where our colleagues from UBC's Okanagan campus do their work. What you see here featured on this slide are KidsAction Coaching's funders. We gratefully acknowledge the contributions from Kids Brain Health Network, funded through the Strategic Science Fund, a program of Innovation, Science, and Economic Development Canada, and the Canada Brain Research Fund, an innovative arrangement between the Government of Canada, through Health Canada, and Brain Canada Foundation. We would also like to recognize the support from Michael Smith Health Research BC for their matching funds, and the University of British Columbia for their support through funding from the Department of Occupational Science and Occupational Therapy. Community University Engagement, and Collaborative Research Mobility Award. Plenty of funding and plenty of supporters here. Altogether, all of them have supported our effort in community partnered research and helped drive our goals. Talking about communities here, we've got 14 logos featuring our different community partners. They're located all across Canada, but I'll just highlight the provinces from which they're from. We've got folks, or organizations rather, from British Columbia, Saskatchewan, and Ontario. If you're wondering what KidsAction Coaching is about, it was initially co-developed with iSpark, which stands for the Indigenous Sport, Physical Activity, and Recreation Council, and Special Olympics BC. We received support from our partners throughout our first funding stream, which spanned from 2019 to 2024. And it has since evolved with our current funding stream to focus on work with Indigenous communities and organizations to help meet the needs of children in rural/remote communities. This funding stream is expected to last from 2025 to 2027. The goal is to fill a gap between medical intervention and families who need support but can't access resources due to different barriers, including finances, time, capacity, location, or medical trauma due to colonization. The KidsAction Indigenous logo, which you see at the bottom of the slide there in the middle, was designed by Jameen Zarowski, who is a Namdis First Nation artist residing in Victoria, BC. I think it's pretty easy to summarize our main goal. It's to get kids moving. Some of our other goals include supporting their families and also improving the well-being of the children and their families as well. When it comes to who this program is for, it's ideally for children with exceptionalities. Medical model calls it disabilities, and Indigenous cultures may call it gifts. It's also known as neurodevelopmental conditions. This includes autism, ADHD, cerebral palsy, or kids with no diagnosis. Frankly, it doesn't matter. We believe that everyone has a right to play, be active, feel included, and be celebrated. The kids we focus on may have challenges with getting around, connecting socially, managing big feelings, or may have unexpected behavior. They may also have different ways of thinking, expressing themselves, or have low vision. The main goal here, however, is to make sure they have the feeling of being included and being celebrated. It's true that mainstream community-based physical activities are not always designed for these type of children or these children that experience these conditions. That being said, however, we recognize that each individual is unique and there's no one size that fits all to solve these problems. Keeping this in mind, we also recognize that leaders may lack the knowledge or training to best support the children they work with. And that's why we've developed KidsAction.
So I'm going to share a little bit about the core components, sort of the foundational pieces of KidsAction coaching. So first of all, KidsAction is a community-based physical activity program. We're working with organizations and physical activity centers that are already doing programs and integrating our resources and approach into what's already happening and what's already benefiting children. Secondly, everything that we do is child-centered, personalized, and that includes training, coaching, practices, and all the resources we have. The whole project is designed to support children and their families. Third is supporting home-based physical activity. Part of KidsAction is helping families at home integrate physical activity things and getting kids active between program times, if it's a weekly program, while they're at home. Fourth is the social interaction for children and families. So building opportunities to connect with other families going through similar experiences. This has looked different across sites. Sometimes it's a little coffee session. Sometimes it's us attending parent circle and meeting families and sharing about the project. If they're not doing so much home-based program, it really varies. And then fifth is walking with families to measure the impact. We have adapted the language here on this one. Previously, it was called evaluating, which is the more research term and research lens. But because we work so closely with Indigenous community partners, we've shifted to walking with to really highlight that collaborative approach instead of sort of a transactional one-way relationship. And then last of all, and most important, as our founding piece, everything we do is with an Indigenous and community lens. So we work hard to learn from, listen to, and adapt and collaborate with Indigenous consultants and community members to make sure we are promoting culturally safe programming. Today, we are going to focus on a partnership with the Cerebral Palsy Association of BC. They wanted a fully virtual program to support the delivery of KidsAction coaching to their participants who are spread all over the province of British Columbia. And so in 2022, they reached out to us and we connected with them to run a fully virtual program. And then we repeated it again in the summer of 2023. And then the third time, or I guess second time after reaching out, they wanted to run the program in 2024. So this was last fall that we delivered the program. And we co-developed everything with CPABC, making sure that existing resources that we had done were adapted so that we could continue to work with the children across BC and make sure that the KidsAction approach was really accessible for kids to do by Zoom. So I'm going to share about the few of the adaptations that we did. So one of the really fun ones is we sent home equipment boxes to all the families. So these typical programs, kids are going to a recreation center or another facility that already has all the equipment. But for kids working in their homes, they might not have access to these things. So to make sure that the program was as accessible as possible, we created these boxes. As you can see in the photo on the screen, there's a list of a bunch of activities, which was a resource for the coaches, as well as an equipment item next to it. So like a medium inflatable ball, and then some activities that they worked with. These boxes included Play-Doh, ribbons, beanbags, buckets, other balls, KidsAction merchandise like stickers or little sensory balls with our logo on it, really things to get them excited about participating in the program at home. We developed this list specifically for CPABC based on the provided equipment and sort of the activities that would be most successful being delivered at home. This is based on the KidsAction Coaching online physical activity bank, which has over 140 physical activities categorized based on 16 foundational motor skills. Some other adaptations we did included coach resources. So we built a very detailed program schedule, which helped coaches sign on during the session and do a minute-by-minute breakdown of the activities. It had a general summary of the physical activity session and then a description of each of the activities and the equipment needed. Coaches would take turns facilitating the program, so each session was about an hour, and there would be 2 coaches sort of tagging on and off throughout the session. So to boost engagement, keep kids excited and participating, as well as give coaches the opportunity to find what they needed to deliver the virtual program. Overall, this was a helpful adaptation that led to the success of the program. Another adaptation we did is our motor skills check-in. So part of the KidsAction coaching program is delivering a pre-program motor skills assessment, which helps coaches set physical activity goals for children based on their current physical skill level. As I mentioned, there were 16 foundational motor skills included, and normally we do this in person with kids, but due to this being a virtual program, we developed checkbox motor skills to make it easier for coaches to watch the recorded motor skills assessment and then assign a score during with a fillable PDF. This overall made it easier for coaches to develop goals for the kids and share them in some of our other resources like a physical activity passport, which is a take-home resource for families to find activities and practice them between programs. We also developed a new motor skills check-in, which is the yellow one on the left here called Fine Motor, and it specifically supports children with cerebral palsy and was identified as helpful by the program coordinator at CPABC. So we did many adaptations, but one of the others we wanted to highlight today was adaptations for wheelchair users. So we made some new activities and a new activity category on the KidsAction website to help participants who use wheelchairs fully engage with the activities that coaches chose for the weekly programs. So KidsAction coaching adaptation cards were updated to include the wheelchair adaptations. This is shown on the right-hand image there, highlighted with the red circle, wheelchair adaptations. The adaptation cards are a set detailed instructions that coaches can use to adapt the activities, making them easier or harder based on the skill level of the children they're working with, or adapting them if kids are getting overwhelmed or other things like that. Overall, these improvements have made KidsAction a little more accessible and inclusive to kids with various abilities. So this slide here walks through the sort of cycle of KidsAction coaching and how we implement the program into existing physical activity programs. So we start off with a motor skills check-in, as I mentioned. Then coaches will choose and assign home-based activities. Families can give input on interests and goals, and then the coaches will set those goals. Families do the activities there at the bottom. And then in the green box, check-ins happen every 1 to 2 weeks. Coaches can make activities based on family input. They can offer incentives like sticker charts or other little prizes to help keep kids excited about the program. And then further adjustments are made, and there might be a final reward at the end for completing the program, like a certificate or another little KidsAction merchandise item. And overall, this is very successful across different organizations and physical activity programs. However, due to the nature of this being a virtual program, we made some adaptations, which I will show here. So as you can see, we still started off with a virtual motor skills check-in on this one. And it is a very similar to the KidsAction approach, the original one, but we made some key changes. We offered incentives right away in the form of the equipment box, which again was that exciting toolkit to engage kids in the virtual space. And motor skills were measured a little earlier than normal before the program start, up to 2 weeks beforehand, so that coaches had time to record and then score the first score the motor skills, and then make a home-based practice kit for families. Overall, this allowed coaches time to review the motor skills before the program started if there was a delay in getting that recording. And then setting goals and home-based practice after meeting the kids, which helped coaches personalize it a little bit more and ensure that they were appropriately strength-based or growth-based goals. And then families could offer rewards because there was a lot more at-home time, maybe offering rewards at home since the coaches weren't in person to do so. And then similarly, checking in every couple of weeks, making adaptations and adjusting goals as needed. So it was really that kind of middle part where there was a big shift from our regular programs. The training and the mentorship for this virtual program was done either in person at UBC or online via Zoom. Typically, KidsAction can travel to communities to do training and then adapting. Because this was working with a lot of volunteers in the Greater Vancouver area for coaching, we were able to train at UBC, and then for those not able to attend that session, we did an online one as well. Once training was done, coaches completed the online training modules to supplement the virtual and in-person training and strengthen their understanding of KidsAction. Additionally, there were training materials like a virtual instruction book. So this is a screenshot of that book, which really highlighted how to fill out and share the coaching resources, such as the physical activity passport, which really works with that home-based practice piece. And then email templates to help coaches communicate effectively with families. Then, in addition to the training and resources, coaches could connect with us, me, or the other team members for extra mentorship and support. So sometimes there were questions on how to facilitate certain activities by Zoom, what adaptations could be appropriate for children in wheelchairs, and what other home-based practice could help children if the families requested additional activities to help their kids stay active and improve their skills. I'm going to pass it to Anton now to share a little bit about the feedback from this program.
Thanks, Kate. I'd like to share some things that help us implement KidsAction with the Cerebral Palsy Association of BC, British Columbia. By the way, I'll abbreviate that as CPA BC just so I don't get my tongue twisted too much. It was super helpful that CPA BC's adaptive programs have all been virtual, so their community already had the infrastructure and experience to facilitate our approach. Persons with cerebral palsy helped lead community partnered programming, which strengthened the program through the sharing of lived experience and making adaptations. It was also very, very helpful to have an enthusiastic site leader to act as a liaison for us and the community that they were supporting. With regards to our coaches who led these sessions, they were all volunteers who had experience working with kids and or in programs relevant to KidsAction. So this included students from the schools of kinesiology, occupational therapy, or physiotherapy. They also found, they being the coaches, found that the mentorship and check-ins from the KidsAction team were helpful for helping inform their adaptations, for example, mixing and matching components during a live session. Lastly, the coaches shared that the participants benefited from having a schedule. This was usually a visual schedule available on screen, and from having equipment for the activities. When it comes to feedback from the families, actually, you know what? At the start of the program, we surveyed the families to determine the best availability for the program. This was to help determine when coaches would actually host these live sessions. And this helped ensure that we were actually available as a resource and that the families were also available to support this program for their children. This definitely helped us when it came to ensuring that we had strong attendance rates. It also helped to have, as I mentioned earlier, the equipment available both to the coaches and the kids. This ensured that during demonstrations, the kids had something tactile to work with, and it ensured that everybody had a level playing field for participation. In terms of family feedback from our satisfaction surveys, we learned that they observed improvement in the motor skills of their children. This included new range of motion, development in activity sequencing, and increased independence of play. The families also indicated that they were generally satisfied with the program, and the parents and children appreciated the opportunity to meet other children with varying levels of cerebral palsy. Lastly, it's important to note that the families didn't really participate in the home-based practice that Kate was highlighting earlier. This brings us then to the different barriers we face for our implementation. First was the scheduling of motor skills check-ins. That's when we get the baseline for how the children are moving to start the program. It took us 2 whole weeks to get just 8 participants' motor skills check-ins filmed. In terms of the multiple virtual resources we've highlighted, it was quite difficult for some of our coaches to navigate those live during the sessions, especially if they were working with just one screen. In terms of movement space for the families, some didn't have the facilities to have one big office to work with or a big living room, so it was quite challenging for them to get that space. In a similar vein, when it comes to camera use for Zoom, some families didn't use Zoom that regularly. And so for them, it was sometimes a challenge to frame the webcam so that we can see the full movement of their children. In terms of engagement, in session, coaches informed us that it was sometimes difficult to understand or have the skill to make a genuine connection with the children virtually. They also noted, they being the coaches, that they wanted more time to personalize activities and to learn about the children's interests and abilities. Lastly, like I mentioned earlier, one of our biggest challenges is participation when it comes to the home-based activities. Despite regular check-in efforts from the coaches, there just wasn't the buy-in there. This is a common theme across KidsAction, and that's why we've worked on what I'll talk about a little bit more later, the KidsAction app, which has helped to address this barrier. In terms of next steps, we're focusing on the sustainability phase. Like I mentioned, there is the app, the KidsAction app, wherein we're undergoing multiple phases of evaluation. The goal really is to support the home-based practice and to be where folks are on their phones, and it would ideally help also the delivery of virtual programs. Another effort is Train the Trainer, wherein we envision the Cerebral Palsy Association of British Columbia's staff to actually be able to train other folks in their own organization to lead this effort. The idea is that we'd be able to support the independent use of KidsAction as an approach, allowing us to step back, which takes us to our vision for a new program, a third round of implementation with CPABC, wherein they take the lead and we're here for support as needed, because we're really striving for that independence in their own community. Thank you so much, everybody, for listening. If you'd like to learn more, you can reach Kate and me via email available there on the slide, or you could scan the QR code also available there, or you can navigate to kidsaction.ca. Thank you.
Thank you, Anton and Kate. I'm going to give it a little minute while people are reflecting to see if they are working on questions to add. I have a question, particularly given the last part that you were talking about, Anton, with barriers to implementation, and reflecting back also on one of the themes, the dimensions of this conference theme on technological, online KT technological integration. What do you think are the pros and cons of having approached this as an online course rather than doing it face to face? And that's for either you or Kate.
Kate, I'll highlight one of the things that I found super useful, then I'll pass it off to you if you've got anything else to add. But one of the biggest things we noticed, Kathleen, is that folks could join in whenever. It's not an exaggeration to say that for most parents, it's a challenge to get your kids to their next program or their next activity after school, especially on a rainy day. Now, kid, I don't remember if it was during the winter, but that's another added benefit. If it was raining outside, if you couldn't get out of the house, or if you had other commitments you had to attend to, you just had to set up Zoom, and our coaches would lead the program. If engagement was there, if the kids were bought in, which I would say they usually were, it offered families a place to keep their kids attended to, entertained, and active while they were still at home. That was one of the benefits we saw. Kate, anything to add?
Yeah, I would agree with what you said. And I also add that in general, one of the biggest barriers to implementation of KidsAction is family capacity, especially for some of the communities we're working with, rural, remote, indigenous communities who are facing compounding barriers to recreation programs. Being able to sign in and participate from their home at any time after school on the weekend, and accessing resources virtually, I think is a huge what's the word, facilitator of the KidsAction approach.
Thank you. And of course, many kids are going to be online doing something anyway, if they're at home, based on my own experience as a mom. So Cindy Kai has joined us. She directs another NIDLR-funded Knowledge Translation Center, MSKTC. And she is wondering, well, she says, great presentation. Would you please share how you made the program culturally relevant to the Indigenous community?
Yeah, thank you for your question, Cindy. So our recent source of funding is supporting partnership with Indigenous communities. And one of the ways we are really working with the community, specifically in Northern BC, is to develop a motor skills check-in for Indigenous cultural dance. So taking some of those foundational movements that they're doing anyways, like arm movements for drumming, or some of the movements for that almost look like a squat and a spin. So kind of working with what they're already doing and building culture into it, and promoting inclusion in those physical activities. That's one way anyways.
And Melly Kay is thanking you for the presentation and pointing out the implementation of any therapeutic activities for children is a complicated process and has multiple factors affecting engagement. So she, feels your pain, I guess, right? It's not easy to do, to get these things out and used. So is there anything else that either one of you want to add before we close?
No, thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thanks for joining.